If you've never been here before, welcome to our YouTube channel, Discover Charlotte, where we're gonna help you do just that. But first, be sure to hit that subscribe button and tap that bell so you can be the first ones to know and to see when new videos pop up about Charlotte, North Carolina, and continue to learn like a local. We get calls, emails, and text messages every day from people just like you looking to make a move to Charlotte, North Carolina. So if you're thinking about making a move, whether it's in the next 9 or 90 days, be sure to reach out. We'd love to connect and help make your move to Charlotte, North Carolina just a little bit easier. Well, today I am here in one of Charlotte's suburbs, Fort Mill. And yes, Fort Mill is in South Carolina, and it did take me a little bit of time to wrap my head around. Wait, there's a suburb of a North Carolina city in South Carolina? Yes, it's true. So Fort Mill is a suburb of Charlotte, and Fort Mill is just south of the border, which is why it's so close to Charlotte, so why the Queen City still claims it as a suburb. Fort Mill was established back in the 1800s, originally home to the Catawba Indians, which if you're from Charlotte or you've spent any time in Charlotte, the Catawba name should sound relatively familiar because we have the Catawba River here. So a lot of companies and marketing kind of plug that name into it. So Fort Mill, originally home to Catawba Indians, was later founded and kind of settled by, when the British came, they set up a fort. And then that fort was right down the road from a grist mill, so Fort Mill. So Fort Mill has quickly become one of the quickest growing cities. But why? What is drawing people to this area? Well, for starters, the accessibility to the interstate. I mean, you can't see it from inside the shopping center, but the interstate is literally right behind us. So you can just hop on it and get to wherever you need to be very quickly. Reason number 2 is the proximity to Charlotte. So for an idea, Charlotte has just under 1 million people. The population here in Fort Mill is just under 30,000, so quite a bit different. So if you want kind of that city feel, but you don't want to be in the center of 1 million people, literally, you can come down to Fort Mill and still have all the accessibility that you need to everything Charlotte has to offer. So you've got the accessibility to the interstate, you've got the proximity to Charlotte. Probably one of the biggest reasons people move here is the schools. So the school system here in Fort Mill is fantastic. It's actually the top school district in South Carolina out of 80 different school districts. If you hop on greatschools.org, my go-to website for learning all about the schools, greatschools.org will rate your website from 1 to 10. And consistently, Fort Mill schools are rated anywhere from like a 7 to 10 out of all of them. So much so that it's drawn so many people here and they've experienced so much growth that they're actually looking to create 3 additional schools in Fort Mill. So by 2025, keep an eye out for those 3 schools. So we've got proximity to the interstates, proximity to Charlotte, schools. What else? Green space. So if you've noticed that Charlotte doesn't have a lot of green space anymore because it's so developed. It's being developed so much that green space is becoming harder and harder. If you notice that Charlotte doesn't have a ton of green space anymore, you'd be right. Charlotte is continuously getting developed, so much so that we're kind of losing a lot of our green space, where Fort Mill has done a really good job at preserving that. So Fort Mill has a lot of community parks. Majority of home communities, like household communities, have some sort of green space in them down here. But one of my favorite things to come to Fort Mill and explore is actually the Ann Springs Greenway. So Ann Springs is actually a nature preserve that is 2 times the size of Central Park. So down there you can launch a paddleboard, you can launch a kayak, you can go fishing, you can take bike rides, whatever you want, they have it there. And if that's not your vibe, then you can just go check out one of the local community parks here. So we've got accessibility to the interstate, we've got proximity to Charlotte, we've got good schools and greenways, and not to mention the growth. I mean, I'm standing in Kingsley, which wasn't here 3 years ago. So we've talked about a lot of good things about living in Fort Mill. We've talked about the proximity to Charlotte. We've talked about the accessibility to the interstates. We've talked about the amazing school zones and the amazing green areas, the green spaces that they have here. But with, of course, like anything, with a little bit of good, there's got to be just a little bit of bad too. So what's the negative about Fort Mill? Well, the cost of living is higher than average. So the cost of living is about 6% higher than the national average and about 17% higher than other areas that you might find in South Carolina. But the average household income here is also a bit higher. So you're at about $120,000 per household versus the national average is around $70,000. So you've got the good and you've got a little bit of bad, but having all that proximity to Charlotte, but still you get the small town community, you get the amenities. I mean, I'm standing here in a shopping center that we're going to get to in just a second, but so you get a little bit of busyness, you get the city life, you get all the amenities and all the options that you would get if you lived in Charlotte, but you're not inside Charlotte, which is really nice because traffic isn't as bad, it's not as busy and as hectic. So it's kind of the best of both worlds here. So much growth has happened in the Fort Mill area that it sent this whole town into motion, really. So I'm standing here, because of the growth, they've had to add 2 different huge shopping plazas and developments here. So I'm standing right here, if we can see that, I'll show you, inside Kingsley, which is this amazing mixed use development. It's here on the water. We've got restaurants, we've got gyms, we've got nail salons, we've got mortgage companies, we've got boutiques, and we have so much here. Like, it just goes on and on. So Fort Mill has had to keep up with everything, keep up with the growth. So you also have like major corporate headquarters here, like LPL Financial. So we're gonna show you a little bit about Kingsley. It's one of my favorite places, probably because it has the water feature on it. And then after that, we're gonna go show you a couple other areas of Fort Mill. So enjoy. Okay, so we are at our next destination, the iconic Baxter Village, and I am standing in one of the best photo ops here that we have close to Charlotte. This bright red photo booth, people come here, they love it, or phone booth for photos. But if you were thinking about moving to the Carolinas and you pictured white front porches and tree-lined streets and walkable shops and stuff, but you couldn't quite afford Charleston, check out Baxter Village. It's down here in Fort Mill. It's right across where we just were, so right across the street from Kingsley. Baxter Village offers you this really close-knit community feel. It is a golf cart community. It's a big mixed-use development. You can see we've got restaurants here. Just down there in the residential area, we've got tons and tons of businesses. So we'll take you up and down the street a little. Ton of single family homes. We have townhouses as you drive through, and they all look the same. They're all a very, smaller lots. Your average price point here is going to be at that $670 price point. But there's so much to do right here in this little area. So I just wanted to show you. Baxter Village is so amazing that we could do a whole nother video on it, and we will, so stay tuned. But I just want to take you through some of the streets and see what you could have here in your close little community, but just right in the middle of Fort Mill. Okay guys, so we are going to wrap up our tour of Fort Mill here in downtown Fort Mill, where it all started, again, back in the 1800s. This is the historic district of downtown Fort Mill. Down here, you're going to see some revitalized historic buildings such as restaurants and some boutique shops and coffee shops. And one of my favorite places that if you're in town, you're visiting Fort Mill, I highly recommend that you visit. It is called Pucker Butt Peppers. And why is that substantial? That is substantial because the owner of that store is actually the creator of the hottest pepper, the Carolina Reaper. So I highly recommend you go and check it out. Let's go take a tour of downtown Fort Mill. Guys, that wraps up our tour of Fort Mill, South Carolina, a suburb of Charlotte, North Carolina. I hope you found it helpful. If you have any questions, be sure to drop them in the comments. I'll make sure to get back to you. And if you're considering making a move to the Charlotte area, North or South Carolina, don't forget to send us a text message, give us a call, drop us an email, or hop on a Zoom call with us. Until next time.